Aaron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Holy crap, Scientology done messed up. Oh my God, you guys. Scientology, it would not take much for Scientology to stop shooting itself in the foot over and over and over and over again. But I'll tell you, the main reason, the fundamental driving influence for all of the problems that Scientology gets into, all these things fundamentally come down to the fact that Scientology isn't bringing in any new members. And believe it or not, Scientology isn't making any doggone money. And I know that sounds ridiculous because Scientology is all about making money. And for sure, Scientology has been able to bring in donations. By the way, I don't mean to bury the lead. Scientology whistleblowers in Africa made a huge splash last week, going to the government authorities to report the fact that the staff at the Scientology Narconon rehab facility in South Africa aren't even getting paid, unsafe working conditions, insurance fraud, and all this stuff. And there's so many layers to this story, more than meets the eye if you don't, really know what's going on in the world of Scientology, because the Narconon and the Narconon centers around the world are historically have been one of the biggest moneymakers for Scientology. If we're talking about Scientology's front groups, there's a whole bunch of front groups that Scientology operates, and their Narconon drug rehab facilities, the Narconon program, the Narconon organization is one of the few Scientology front groups that actually makes a ton of money. The other one is the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises, or WISE. That's Scientology's business consulting front groups. WISE makes a ton of money, and it still does. The Narconons have always been a big source of revenue. But Scientology's Narconon centers are now having the exact same problem that that Scientology organizations all around the world have been having for a long time. They don't make any damn money, and they can't pay their staff. Now, we're going to get to the articles here in a moment, but here's what I mean when I say they don't make any money. A Scientology organization is supposed to make its money selling Scientology courses and selling Scientology auditing. Scientology organizations around the world, I am not exaggerating this, are not solvent. They cannot even pay their bills based on the money they make from selling courses and auditing. This is how far Scientology has fallen. This is why David Miscavige has shifted the emphasis in Scientology from making money from selling Scientology courses and auditing to making money from its members by just getting straight donations, meaning don't buy courses, don't buy auditing, just give us money. And that money goes to the International Association of Scientologists, the IAS, Scientology's membership organization. That money also sometimes gets donated directly to certain real estate projects called the Ideal Org program. And in some of my recent videos, I have commented that based on some very good contacts currently working at Scientology organizations, we've had greater visibility than ever into the internal workings and the present internal statistics of Scientology organizations. And I can tell you that just with my little videos here that I do once or twice a day on YouTube, I make more money from my videos on YouTube every week than most Scientology organizations in the United States are making a week. And that's not because I'm making a ton of money on my videos. It's because the orgs really are making that little money. And I'm talking about orgs that are the big, giant, 50,000 square foot facilities with staff members that have been there for decades, and in many cases, Sea Org members running the organizations. This is how far Scientology has fallen. So when I see that a Narconon isn't even able to pay its staff, when I know that, when I was still in Scientology, I worked for a guy who also owned a Narconon, and my wife worked at the Narconon. And the chief operating officer of the company I worked at was also basically the COO for the Narconon. So I know all about the Narconon business. And students pay $30,000 for the Narconon program. It's expensive. And And one thing that makes Narconon unique amongst Scientology front groups is it very commonly employs people who are not Scientologists. Most people who go to a Narconon program, they don't know they're going to a Scientology program, and they're non-Scientologists. And they do the program, and they sort of get introduced to the idea of L. Ron Hubbard and his writings, just because the whole program is based on L. Ron Hubbard and his writings. Narconon students do a lot of Scientology auditing, called a type of auditing called objectives. And very often what will happen is these non-Scientologists who have just graduated the Narconon program are then recruited to work for the Narconon. This is how they end up with non-Scientologists working for a program that is a Scientology program. And that's somewhat unique for the amongst Scientology front groups. That is one of the things that is unique about Narconon. That very often then comes to bite Narconon in the butt, because a Scientologist working for Narconon would never, ever, ever go to the government and blow the whistle. But you get non-Scientologists working at the Narconon, and you're treating them like a Scientology staff member, and you're not paying them. All of a sudden, you got a whistleblower on your hands. So a few days ago, this article came out about these people blowing the whistle to the government. And there's been an update in the article where Scientology has retaliated against the whistleblowers and kicked them out of the facility and off the premises. And I'm wondering if perhaps this violates some sort of whistleblower protection laws. But let's take a look at the original article, and let's see what's going on here. Okay. Am I got the wrong one? Let's look at the right one. Staff at Scientology-backed drug rehab claim wages not paid, blow whistle on dodgy labor practices. Narconon Africa Rehabilitation Center in Rustenburg, Northwest, is facing allegations of worker abuse, irregular practices, and flouting of labor laws. Beyond the gilded gates that lead to the pristine grounds of the Narconon Africa Rehabilitation Center in Rustenburg, Northwest, an unsuspecting observer would not anticipate that executives at the Church of Scientology-backed rehab have flouted even the most basic labor laws, leaving vulnerable workers penniless and helpless. I mean, already it sounds like they're practically Sea Org members. Penniless and helpless? I mean, that's Scientology for you right there. And these days, it's not even just Scientology Sea Org members that end up penniless and helpless. It is regular staff members. The truth is, regular staff members routinely get paid even less than Sea Org members, which is crazy because regular staff members have to pay for rent and food and transportation and everything. A regular Scientology staff member has to pay their own way in the real world, and they actually, on average, get paid less than Sea Org members. Okay, quote, "We have not been paid in 5 weeks. But even before December, we went 8 weeks without receiving our salaries. While we beg for peanuts, the people who run this facility are getting paid for the work that we do, but we get nothing." Whistleblower Nomalady, okay, let me get this right. Nomalady Nekabambe, the medical liaison officer, told the Daily Maverick. Okay, again, it's funny because medical liaison officer, or MLO, is the exact same title of a position in a Scientology organization. And it's someone who, without fail, has absolutely no medical training of any kind whatsoever. But for some reason, they're put in charge of medical logistics and medical expenses. They're not a doctor. They're not a nurse. They're not anything. Okay. While Narconon South Africa opened its doors in 2024, many of the workers the publication spoke to only started working at the facility in August. Since then, all 29 employees have endured late or non-payment of salaries, with wages often delayed far beyond the contractual agreement of weekly payouts every Friday. Management claimed the reason for non-payment was that their salaries depended on the arrival of new clients. Your salaries depended on the arrival of new clients. It really makes it seem like if we don't make any money, we don't have any money to pay you, which is exactly how a Scientology organization works, but not how normal organizations in the real world operate. There's a certain risk that you take on when you open a business or own a business. And part of that risk is being able to take on the expense of your employees. And if you don't make the money, you still owe those employees money. That's your risk. And your reward is that if you make a ton of money, you still only have to pay your employees what they have been promised. So Scientology takes the whole risk reward out of the equation. Scientology puts all of the risk onto the staff members with almost no upside on the reward side. Okay, let's see. Yes, okay. So management claimed basically their salaries depended on the arrival of new clients. However, a social worker who asked to remain anonymous said their contract does not stipulate that their salary is dependent on what the facility terms new students. We've been told outright that we won't get paid until new students enroll. This isn't just unprofessional, it's survival at this point. Despite being hired as paid employees, staff have reportedly been told that they must volunteer their services if there are no new students. Those who question this policy or express disaffection are told the gate is open if you want to leave. Narconon's claims of financial distress have raised critical questions for the unpaid workers. A source told Daily Maverick that since opening in January 2024, the facility has hosted about 31 students, each paying 200,000 Rand, with one VIP paying about 500,000 Rand. Okay, now I believe 200,000 Rand is about $10,000 or $11,000. Give me a second. I'm going to look it up real quick. 200,000 African Rand. Up. Yeah, well, 20,000 Rand is just about $1,000. So 200,000 is going to be about $10,000. Okay. Okay, so it's really only been open for like, so a year since opening in January 2024. Okay, I get it. Employees told the Daily Maverick they are left wondering why these substantial fees do not translate into timely and fair compensation. Adding insult to injury, Narconon's executive director, Bathinda Fang, has consistently dismissed them when they ask about their unpaid salaries. She says she has no tree where she gets money to pay us. So this is interesting, guys. This goes to show you, though, the money in Scientology only ever flows up. It never, ever flows down. Scientology, the mother church, the Church of Scientology International, makes tons and tons and tons of fees from these Narconon centers. But when the Narconon centers don't have enough new enrollments for that week to pay their staff, Scientology will never step in and cover the shortfall. Okay, so yes, money does not grow on trees, she tells her staff. Very professional. One worker revealed, underscoring the lack of accountability and respect for the workforce. Okay, allegations of UIF and SARS fraud. Okay, I think this is where they're basically collecting all sorts of, they're taking out of the paychecks all sorts of payments for various government, whether it's taxes or government insurance programs, and yet these employees aren't even registered with those agencies, and so those payments are not even being passed on to the government. Let's take a look at this. The extent of Narconon South Africa's non-compliance with South African labor law goes deeper, with staff claiming that their wages were garnished for unemployment insurance fund and pay-as-you-earn contributions. This is despite allegations that Narconon South Africa has failed to register them with the Department of Labor or the South African Revenue Service. The practice is not only illegal, but also deprives employees of vital social security benefits if they become unemployed. Quote, it's like we're trapped. We're scared to just wash our hands of this situation and leave Narconon, because if we do, what happens to the money that they've been taking? We can't even apply for UIF at labor because we're not registered. Wow. Daily Maverick contacted the Department of Labor to inquire about the allegations that not only were Narconon employees not being paid, but the MPO had not registered its employees with the department and was allegedly stealing wages by making UIF deductions. Oh my God. This is a big deal. Department spokesperson Tiboho Thajane's response to the inquiry about Narconon's registration status was to request that Daily Maverick reveal its source. A response would only be provided once the source's details were disclosed. Okay. Thajane said this was necessary because the Labor Department had not received a formal complaint from any Narconon employees, and the department wanted to follow up on the case. With the employees' approval, Daily Maverick sent the departments a copy of the workers' ID numbers and grievances on 30 December, but has received no clarification on the matter. Other allegations of unfair practices and intimidation. The facility's groundsmen face hazardous conditions, including being required to work on septic tanks with their bare hands without proper protective gear, such as gloves. Despite these unsafe conditions, there's no provision for a danger allowance, further underscoring the disregard for worker safety. Nekabambe added that as if unpaid wages and illegal deductions weren't enough, employees are reportedly forced to pay 3,000 Rand each month for food and lodging at the facility. For workers already denied their due wages, this additional financial burden has left them feeling powerless. Yeah. Yep. So even the Narconon here in Clearwater, Florida, when now it's in Clearwater, Florida, but back then it was like up in Holiday. Even those staff members were in a situation, meaning the students would graduate the program, they would join staff at the facility, and they would live on the facility. So even that arrangement, and they would have to pay rent. And so that's not just something they're doing for workers in South Africa. That's kind of how the Narconon programs have structured themselves. Okay. Yeah. It says we are essentially paying to work here. It's not fair and it's not right. Employees who dare speak out about these issues face the threat of legal action. Another social worker contacted Daily Maverick on Friday, requesting anonymity out of fear of retribution. Allegedly, upon management hearing that she planned to take action against Narconon, they approached other workers in a bid to intimidate them into making false reports about the worker that could be used in a defamation lawsuit. Many of the people here are scared to speak. Some just want to leave, but I am not afraid. What they're doing is not right, and South Africans need to know. I don't care if they come after me. I want them to know that it was me who revealed all of this. They cannot get away with treating people like this, Nekabambe said. No response was received from Narconon after several attempts. This is an ongoing story. Well, the ongoing story is the retaliation. And it says this article came out just an hour ago. So let's take a look at this. Scientology linked rehab boots out whistleblowers who exposed illegal labor practices. After Daily Maverick ran an article about how Narconon Africa Rehab Center allegedly abused workers, engaged in irregular practices, and flouted labor laws, the organization responded by kicking the whistleblowers off the premises. Now realize, guys, it's not just like an employee being asked to pack up their desk and leave. They live on the premises. And if my Google searches were correct, one of the employees that they did this to lived like a 6-hour drive away. And not only have they not been getting paid, but they've been having to pay to stay there. Anyway, the article goes into more detail. So let's take a look at it. When medical liaison officer Normalady Nekabambe and social worker Nahanla Pangisa came forward with allegations of worker abuse, irregular practices, and the flouting of labor laws, the whistleblowers fully expected blowback. However, they did not anticipate increased intimidation and strong-arm tactics from Narconon Africa so quickly. On Thursday, January 23rd, the directors of Narconon South Africa, the name under which Narconon Africa Rehab Center is registered. Okay, so the directors, Sandile Halaisi and Diana Safina, swung into action. What began as an offer of retrenchment escalated to Nekabambe and Pangisa being suspended and kicked off of the nonprofit organization's Northwest premises. With no concern about how they would get home, the employees said. Okay, so I had to look up retrenchment. I'd never heard this word before. And my understanding is retrenchment is basically you're being laid off. It's not a punitive thing. It doesn't imply any wrongdoing, nothing, it's not, it's different than getting fired. So that's the difference, guys. Okay, where is it? Okay, this came only one day after the Daily Maverick published an article dealing with how the NPO engaged in illegal labor practices, including late or non-payment of salaries, and making UIF and pay deductions from wages despite not registering employees with the Department of Labor or the South African Revenue Service. Retrenchment attempts. Nekabambe said, Sandile and Diana came to my cottage at 10 a.m. with retrenchment forms and asked if I was prepared to sign. I told them I'm refusing to sign because what they're doing is wrong and they're just trying to silence me. Nekabambe and Pangisa provided the Daily Maverick with recordings of the encounter. In the heated exchange, the directors admitted to the allegations of unlawful labor practices. Oopsie, you done messed up. They conceded that it was wrong and claimed they had to remedy the situation. In the audio, Halaisi is heard explaining that the rehab operates on the basis that things are only paid when clients arrive at the facility. He said that the rehab was not at full capacity. Nekabambe was offered a severance package of 20,000 Rand. Again, guys, that's about $1,000, which Halaisi claimed covered her outstanding pay, 1 week's remuneration, notice pay, and leave pay. The medical liaison officer shared a copy of her payslip with the Daily Maverick, which showed that her weekly pay before deductions amounted to 5,000 Rand. After going 4 weeks without being compensated, the severance package would only cover Nekabambe's outstanding pay. When asked if the organization would return the UIF pay and workers' compensation deductions Narconon had been making since August, Nekabambe was told that would not happen. Quote, "You can go to the courts if you want," Safina said. According to Nekabambe's payslip, the weekly deductions are as follows. And they give some numbers. Okay, that comes to about 5,200 Rand a month and about 26,000 Rand for the 5 months that the medical liaison officer had been working at the facility. The employees included the monthly deduction for food in their grievances because Nekabambe and Pangisa said that they were not told about the deductions when they began their employment at Narconon. Okay. And according to a law, the employer is prohibited from making deductions from an employee's wages without their written consent. The only instance where an employer can make deductions without consent is when it is required by law, collective agreement, court order, or arbitration award. Okay, quote, "They said they want to pay people what they owe them, but I'm not owed 20,000 Rand by Narconon. For 5 months, they've been taking almost 6,000 Rand and saying that they are paying SARS and labor when they weren't. 5 months, they were unlawfully taking money, and now they tell me I can't get it back. They are mad, and I told them I will not take the retrenchment package because what they're doing is wrong. Pangisa was given the same offer, but the package she was offered was also less than what she was owed, so she rejected it. She said she would have no problem leaving Narconon, but would do so only when the NPO agreed to pay her everything she was owed. Thursday was not the first time Nekabambe was given a notice of retrenchment. On 30th of December, after weeks of vocally expressing their dissatisfaction with not being paid, both the medical liaison officer and Pangisa were handed retrenchment notices, which they refused to sign because they wanted to be compensated first. Wow. Imagine you owe these people money. You owe them wages, and you're demanding they sign forms before you even give them the money they owe. This cannot be legal. Okay, talks turn sour. Pangisa said that Narconon, represented by Halaisi and Safina, did not take kindly to the 2 employees' rejection of the retrenchment package. Mere minutes after she and Nekabambe laid out to the directors the terms under which they would accept the retrenchment package, the pair returned with a fresh batch of documents, suspension letters. Okay, so it went from a layoff to a firing. The directors said their investigation into the workers' grievances flagged troubling conduct on Pangisa and Nekabambe's part. You see, guys, I mean, this is pure retaliation. So basically, the executives at the Narconon are like, well, we had all of this information here that we could use to fire you without, like that's what they had in their back pocket. They didn't say this. But instead of firing them, we're going to approach them and ask them to sign documents before we even give them what we owe them. And then if they refuse to sign the documents, then we're going to fire them. Pure retaliation. The director said their investigation flagged into the workers' grievances, flagged troubling conduct. Nekabambe was told that she was being suspended for not performing a pregnancy test on a client who entered the rehab in October 2024. Quote, "This doesn't make sense. That student was sent from the Narconon Center in Kimberley. Why didn't they do the test there? Also, I told them that I took the student to the doctor where the test was done because it is not my responsibility." Wow. Pangisa's offense, according to the notice of suspension the Daily Maverick was sent, was that she failed to follow Narconon rules by refusing to deliver services to a client on 19 January, failed to complete progress notes, and was accused of creating unrest. Quote, "The 19th was a Sunday, and it was my weekend off, so I was not even at work. So the question is, when did I refuse to do work when I was not even there?" After the employees challenged the reason for their suspension, Halaisi and Safina told them that Narconon would pay the outstanding amount Pangisa and Nekabambe were owed, including the taxes and the insurance and the food deductions, on the condition that they signed official documents stating that they chose to resign of their own free will. An additional condition of payment was that if they accepted the payment, they had to sign a document stating that they would not seek any further payment from the NPO or speak publicly about the Narconon. It's unbelievable to me that they're trying to get them to sign away their rights just to receive what they're already owed. I mean, in America, that wouldn't even fly. That wouldn't even fly in America. I mean, I hope I hope there's a legal recourse for these women. Ultimately, the employees were given 2 hours to vacate the premises, pending an investigation into their suspension. While Pangisa had an apartment in Johannesburg and left on Thursday evening, Nekabambe's home is in Venda, Limpopo. And I looked that up, guys. It's like a 5 or 6 hour drive. Quote, imagine I'm an old lady in her 60s and they wanted to kick me out with no money when my home is so far away in the type of country we live in. Is that safe? The medical liaison officer left the rehab facility on Friday when it was safe for her to do so. She said she was still unclear about where they stood with Narconon. Quote, they came with so many documents with different proposals. I don't know whether I've been retrenched or suspended or if they're going to tell people I resigned. I know this is happening because I decided to speak out, but I don't care. I'm glad I did it. Okay. Where's the money going? Daily Maverick's previous request for comment to Narconon Africa went unanswered, but the audio leaked by the whistleblower offered a confounding answer. Quote, this money went to pay salaries to people. Some money was deducted, and from this money, people were paid their salaries. Safina can be heard explaining in the audio. When Nekabambe asked if Narconon was deducting money from her to pay other employees' salaries, Safina said that the money was deducted to pay her salary. These people think we're stupid, Nekabambe told the Daily Maverick. If they were making these deductions to pay my salary, wouldn't I have all that money right now? When I ask them where the money is, where the money is, they don't have answers. But that is all we want to know. I'll tell you guys. The staff members that I'm in touch with at a variety of Scientology organizations around the United States, presently, right now, have not been paid in 4 weeks. I mentioned last month that David Miscavige rolled out an entire new pay system that was promoted as being like the way Scientology staff members were all going to be able to make enough money working at the organization, similar to if they were performing a similar job out in the real world. And you go, there's only so much money to go around. If the organization isn't making enough money to pay its bills, there's no money to pay the staff, period. It doesn't matter what the staff pay looks like. By the way, the way the staff pay works is, and I have all the issues and I've been meaning to sit down and do a whole video about it, but essentially it's a percentage. You take the gross income, there's some mandatory deductions, you arrive at the corrected gross income, and a percentage of the corrected gross income goes to the staff pay sum. And then the staff pay sum is divided up amongst staff members on a unit system. So every staff member's post has a certain number of units. It's your post. Some of your levels of training are taken into consideration. You take all the staff members and all the total units for all the total staff members. You divide that into the staff pay sum, and you get a unit value. So if there's no CGI, because there's not enough money to pay the bills, the staff aren't getting paid. It doesn't matter how sexy your pay system plan is. If there's not enough money, you're not getting paid. Now, imagine Scientology being so unsophisticated that instead of realizing, in order to make sure we can pay our staff well, we actually have to make more money. And David Miscavige instead rolls out this whole new pay system and is like, hey guys, we're going to give the staff members a greater percentage of the corrective gross income so that if you guys make more money, you can get more pay. And you're like, yeah, but the problem was we weren't making the damn money. So 100% of zero is still zero. All right, let's see. All right, so that's the articles. And let's go through some starred comments and we'll wrap this one up. Wise Mama, is the new Narconon in Louisiana the only one getting paid under insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield? No, in the United States, to the best of my knowledge, I'm only speaking for the Narconons that I'm familiar with, but the Narconon that I was familiar with was one of the newer Narconons, and it had already gotten to a point where it could take insurance. Narconon actually does, it's what allows Narconon to stay in business, is it does take insurance. But there are wealthy families who do cash pay and pay $30,000 for their family member to do the program. Thank you for the question, Wise Mama. Love Maddie. Who doesn't get abused by the Church of Scientology? LRH set it up that way. Chris 10M. In the early 2000s, my cousin had to go to Narconon in Brazil. He came back and they said if he stayed clean for 1 month, he could come work at Narconon in Florida. All he did there was find booty and drugs. Okay, at the Narconon, they called it, was it called Narconon Suncoast? I think it was called Narconon Suncoast. I'm not sure if it's still called Narconon Suncoast or if it's called Narconon Clearwater now. The qualifications secretary was the daughter of the owner. She was a second-gen Scientologist born and raised. She was in charge of quality control for the entire place. And she was doing drugs with the students. She was also arrested shoplifting at the same time. So not a great look, but you know, that's what they got at Narconon. That's what's going on at Narconon. Love Maddie. Oh, already got that one. Okay, Vicky C. Why are they called students and not patients? Because it's not a medical facility. That is why. Yeah. And Susan Simon, how can they call Narconon a nonprofit organization? That's a joke. All Narconons are nonprofit organizations. A nonprofit organization does not mean you don't make profit, just so you know. The Scientology Money Project, good to see you, Jeff. The fraudulent resignation letters are so Scientology and show criminal intent to defraud. Absolutely. Wise Mama, and they need to pay their franchise fees to Narconon International first, I bet. Oh, you know damn well that the reason those staff aren't getting paid is because Scientology is getting its cut first. Like, that would be the one thing that would actually get a Narconon facility actually shut down, is if it, meaning Scientology wants to prop these things up to the best that they can. Maybe they'll, but one thing that would that would allow Scientology, that would make Scientology allow one of these things to shut down, is if the managers were not sending Scientology their pay. Scientology would instantly revoke the licensing agreement and shut that thing down. Or they might get some other Scientologists to go in and take over the whole thing. But that would be the deal breaker. Scientology not getting its cut. All right, guys, that is all for this video. I have another one that I want to do this evening if I can get to it, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for joining me as always, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,